Hello and welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. My name is Scott Barker, Head of Partnerships at Sales Hacker, evangelist for Outreach.io, and thanks for hanging out with us for the next hour. We've got an excellent conversation lined up for you today. I know I've been getting pinged left, right, and center about this topic. I know Patricia and Ellen have as well. And before I do introduce my awesome guests, what we're going to be talking about today is how to become a one-to-one video prospecting pro. So this is something that personally helped me greatly in my career, both as an individual contributor and when I led BD teams. We were very early adopters of video, and we reaped the benefits of that. And it's crazy that we're still not fully at a place where it's table stakes across the board. Yeah, before we dive in, just some really quick housekeeping items. So number one, this will be recorded. So if you got to jump off, you got to go make some video prospecting emails, you get inspired, go and do so for sure. And we'll send this out within 24 hours. And then number two, whenever we do these conversations, they're for the community. That's why we do them. It's for you to learn. So we want you to jump on. There's a little Q&A section at the bottom. If you want to jump on right now, tell us your name, company you work for, and any relevant questions that you have throughout, please do jump on and share them. But now that we've got that out of the way, I want to introduce my awesome guests. I am joined by Patricia McLaren. Patricia, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Excited to have you. So quick background on Patricia. Patricia is the co-founder of Copyshoppe, who was an early adopter of this whole kind of sales engagement movement. Partners with Outreach, Sales Loft, and you took your talents on the road, actually, which is pretty cool. Traveling for 338 days. Was that straight, all at once?
Yeah. Took
wow.
A year with my laptop and a backpack.
I love it. And you hit 26 countries. This is a difficult question. Do you have a favorite?
That's like the first question everybody asks. It's somewhere in Asia. I can tell you much. Japan is up there for sure.
I haven't made it to Japan. It's like my next one on the list after I do South America. All right. So while traveling, Patricia, you oversaw the entire email messaging process and developed Copyshoppe's framework on kind of this emotional triggers versus today's common feature selling, which hopefully everyone is moving away from now. And you know a thing or two about quality content and backpacking. I love it. I love it. So that'll be another webinar, but I'll have to pick your brain on these 26 countries for sure. Maybe what you learned from traveling and how you applied it to building a business would be cool. And I'm also joined by Ellen Stafford. Ellen, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited for the topic.
I'm pumped to have you. And Ellen is the Director of Business Development at Vidyard. My understanding was you were one of the early Vidyardians over on the East Coast of Canada. What number were you on?
Good question. It was somewhere in the late 20s, early 30s. I've been at Vidyard now 5 years.
Very cool. Awesome. Mm-hmm. And you're a tech and, of course, video enthusiast. Mm-hmm. And when you're not talking about SaaS, you're hanging out with your dog, planning your next road trip, which I know you're going camping this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. We were talking about it just before we got started. I'm going camping with her this weekend.
I love it. I love it. And when you're not doing all that, you are also obsessed with watching HBO's The Wire. I've never watched it. I've never watched it. I'm going to do it. All right. So before we dive into this topic, and we got a lot to cover today, I want to do two really quick polls, just so it's going to help us, frame this conversation a little bit. First question is, what is your role? So are you an individual contributor? Are you a manager? Or are you looking at this from, a director level and above? So we'll let that roll for about 5 seconds. 1, 2. While we're waiting, Nathan Pierce says yes to The Wire.
Yes.
He's on your team, Ellen.
Good job, Nathan.
All right. 3, 2, 1. We'll wrap it up. Okay. Interesting. So we definitely got more individual contributors than I think we typically see at Sales Hacker, with an overwhelming 67%. So this is definitely a topic that people that are in the thick of it every day want to know how to prospect better, how to incorporate video. And then 19% manager, and then 14% is that director level and above. So we'll definitely try to hit from all angles, but it sounds like the individual contributor is where we'll spend most of our time. And then the second question I want to ask really quickly is, have you used video in your sales process before? Have you incorporated it in some form or fashion? Ellen, Patricia, any guesses to where we're going to lie on this one?
I'm guessing maybe 50-50.
I think that's probably fair. Patricia?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close down the middle. I think a lot of people are starting to incorporate it more and more, so they probably dabbled.
Yeah, I'm going to go 60 yes, 40 no, just because I think the Sales Hacker audience is usually pretty up on trends. All right, we'll stop that in 3, 2, 1.
Wow.
Ooh, very close. Alan, you
We're
got
both right.
Yeah. So yes, 54%, no, 46%. So very, very close there. Okay, that's helpful. 46% of people have not incorporated video at all. Would love just initial thoughts on that, Patricia.
Well, I think after this webinar, you guys will hopefully take away some valuable insights and some actionable things you can even bring to your team or your process today that will be really helpful, because a lot of people that I work with are super excited about video, but they just don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So we'll be covering a lot of that today, just different use cases for it, different types of videos, all that good stuff. But I think it's a really underutilized channel right now. Sales is constantly evolving. We have to continue to evolve our channels and our mediums and meet our prospects where they want to engage. And video is a really great way to grab attention. So
Totally. Couldn't agree more. All right. So Ellen, let's kick it off. And the first question is kind of just framing up this whole chat we're going to have. And my question is, why should organizations even be thinking about incorporating video into their prospecting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially today, it's so noisy in the digital world that it's getting harder and harder to capture our prospects' attention. So we need to do something that differentiates from just text-based emails. The buyer is also changing. Video is becoming more and more prominent in our personal lives. So those buyers are now expecting to be educated through video and to be communicated to through video. And by incorporating something like video, it's no longer, a BDR reaching out to a VP of sales. It's, Ellen reaching out to Scott to have a conversation. So we've gotten, it's gotten so noisy with things like template and automation that we need to get back to humanizing that process. And video is such a strong way to do that, so that we can still, capture prospects' attention, deliver value to our prospects as well. Totally.
Yeah. I think one thing you said there is humanizing yourself. That's what I always go back on when I think of video, and why I've seen it as such a successful channel, medium, whatever you want to call it, is this idea that, Patricia, we were talking about this before we jumped on the webinar. Like, I truly would rather be like rolled out of bed and like in a hoodie with like my hair all messed up with my video on, versus not having a video on. Because at least they're like, oh, Scott's a human being. And I think that's what people crave more and more now. I think there's this almost healthy distrust of, big organizations and big corporations, and people are looking more to the individual to build that trust. And I think video is just such a good way to do that. And Patricia, I put the same question to you, because I know you work with a ton of clients and help them incorporate video into their process. So why should every organization be thinking about incorporating video?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with clients on their whole sales engagement strategy. So emails, calls, direct mail, social, video, you name it. We're constantly testing and iterating and optimizing the whole sequence. And just as you guys both said, video is that humanizing element, and that's what we bring into the email copy as well. Let's bring it back to the basics, have just a conversation with the prospect and reach out to the person, not necessarily the role that they're in or the hat they're wearing at that moment in time. And video allows you to show your unique personality, you know, like I'm always dancing, or I'm always like showing my dog on screen, or whatever it is. And we all have some unique traits to share with our prospects, and that's how we connect. And people buy from people. So I love incorporating it in and testing different variants, like same message, but let's try it with a video. And usually the results are, you know, surprisingly more effective with video. There's just two main attention grabbers. You've got movement and you've got noise. You know, that's two things that really pique people's interest, and that's how you stand out.
Absolutely. And you made a really good point about a trust, Scott. So people are inherently adverse to being sold to, like that concept of being sold to. And when you're doing, you know, prospecting, people automatically have their gates up, right? So there's a lot to be said around using your body language and being able to like show your face and you're smiling, and obviously your tone and your words come across as well, but your body language is such a strong way that we communicate and build trust with our prospects. And it really, as you said, Patricia, you can be yourself while you're building that relationship, right?
Absolutely. And there's also this, I read this Harvard Business Review not that long ago, and it said people process visuals, so video, pictures, 46,000 times faster than they do written text. So that is crazy. So that the amount of input coming in from a video or a visual is much, you know, much faster by a huge margin. So in our lives where everyone is doing a million things and they're on their phone, probably just trying to delete as many emails as possible as they rush between meetings, if you give them an opportunity to, you know, see something in a video format and they don't have to use their brain as much, that's helpful. So I guess moving on here, in your eyes, Patricia, what is a solid framework? Because you know, at Copyshoppe, you guys basically build very successful frameworks. So what does a solid sequence look like these days, and how do you successfully implement video into that?
Yeah, so that's a really loaded question. I feel like we could do a whole webinar on that as well. Sequence design. I guess the short answer is it depends. We usually start with like 6 emails and incorporate phone calls, social, direct mail, video within that, depending on our audience. But it really depends on your persona and, you know, the strategy. So know your audience. I'd say if you're selling into like IT security, will they open a video email one? Probably not. But if it's sales or HR or whoever, you know, someone outside of that realm and it makes sense, then we say definitely lead with a compelling video. It's also great to incorporate video in the sequence when they tend to drop off or you see the engagement is kind of low. That tends to pick up pique the curiosity again and boost the engagement. So typically email 1 if it makes sense for who you're reaching out to, and then later in the sequence, like step 4 or the last step. Nice.
Yeah. So lead with it, and then if you naturally look at your analytics across a sequence and say, you know, on the 6th touch, we always seem to lose people, that's a good time to hit them with another video.
Nice. Absolutely. And it's constantly changing. Everything we're doing is, you know, we're running A/B tests to see, we're relying on the data to make those kinds of decisions. And it's usually the engagement starts really strong up top, steps 1, 2, 3. But if we start to see that dip, hey, let's test out this message with a video instead.
Yeah. I think that's one of the interesting things about the time we're in right now is, as soon as things become best practices, like after this webinar, if everyone starts incorporating video into the 6th touch, it'll naturally stop being as effective, right? So it's really interesting that we constantly have to iterate and adapt, and I think that's what makes all of our jobs interesting.
So
Ellen, in your eyes, at Vidyard, when you coach your team to go out there and do video prospecting, you guys arguably created this whole category. So what is the framework that you use internally to implement video?
Yeah, and I would echo a few points that Patricia made there. Like, we use it early. We use it on our first step. We want to lead with our best foot forward. If we can convert individuals early in our messaging, and we don't have to do a couple more touches, that's better for us. And obviously, we're using our product to talk to individuals about our product. So that's the way we use it. And then we just look for ways, places where we might want to increase our conversion rate, again, to Patricia's point. And then we just encourage our team to be really creative. If they're finding that, their messages are really long, is there a place that you can add a video in there? And not even just videos that we create ourselves. We love to use the content that our solutions consultants are creating or that our marketing team is creating. Instead of just referencing a customer's name and some stats, we can tell a bit of a story in a 30-second video. So we look for those opportunities as well. And then lastly, where you tend to lose some momentum, potentially you're doing a handoff from a SDR or a BDR to an account executive. That's a great way to use video to continue the relationship with the prospect, is do a little bit of an introduction video so that momentum can continue all the way through. So those are just a couple of points, but I love Patricia's point there around look at your own cadence, look at your own personas, and look for opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly go into the community here. Renee Longo says you should totally do a webinar on sequence strategy. So we might have to come back for part two. And then Clinton, thanks for the question, Clinton. And I think we did a good job answering this one already. Clinton wants to know, should I be putting video throughout my whole process or just one video in a sequence? And I think it's safe to say that, adding multiple videos is typically the way to go.
Yeah, you want to look at your audience, right? People like to be communicated to in different ways. Some people want to be called, some people want to be emailed. Some people, it's better to reach them on LinkedIn. So leveraging video is a great way to get your message across in these different channels. So I wouldn't say add a video to every single touch, because potentially your prospects are in a lot of meetings and they can't watch it right at that second. But you want to, pique their interest so they come back to it later, or, sometimes just use text, just use phone. It's about using different channels, different types of messages.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of omni-channel approach. And one thing that we haven't touched on yet, and sometimes I feel it when I put my buyer hat on or people are prospecting into me, is when someone makes you a really thoughtful video and maybe makes you 2 or 3, there's almost this guilt factor where it's okay, they put some real time into that. Yeah. I feel like I owe them at least a quick, hey, here's what's going on in my world, which I think is another reason why video is so powerful.
Definitely.
The gift of giving. People are writing their own songs these days for prospects.
Yeah.
Totally.
Someone takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes to write a song. I can't write a song.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if someone's writing me a song, I'm at least telling them what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't all get 10 songs in our inbox. Okay, so let's talk about actually provoking a response, because I think that's what it's all about, right? It's about how do we get some more leverage, some more information that's going to help us, ultimately turn them into an opportunity, close one deal. So Ellen, how can I actually use video to pique interest and provoke a response? What are the kind of things that you're seeing that almost force people to respond?
Yeah, I think with video, it can definitely capture the prospect's attention and get them to listen to your video. But like anything, you need to be able to be relevant and add value in your messaging to be able to drive that next step. So while video will get your message across, you still have to be thinking about that when it comes to your messages. So to capture their attention, always look at ways to be creative. I've seen some pretty creative videos that we've used internally and that obviously have been sent to me throughout the years. But at the end of the day, rule of thumb is are you adding value and are you being relevant to your prospects, so that they might take a quick meeting with you, but they won't progress as an opportunity unless you can make sure that you're relevant and adding value.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an awesome point that's not touched on enough, is this idea of relevance versus personalization, which are different. Just because you say, hey, Scott, you went to this university, go Bulldogs or whatever, doesn't mean that that makes me believe that you're going to be able to help me with my business challenges.
Yes.
Right. So you
Absolutely.
still have to, that might be the hook initially where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. They know my mascot. But if you're not tying it into relevant business challenges, exactly like you said, Ellen, it's like maybe you'll get a pity 15 minutes on a calendar, but you're not going to show that value of taking that relationship to the next stage.
100%. And video is such a strong way. Maybe you sell a really complex product. Like video is such a strong way to be able to explain your value proposition. You just need to make sure you include that in your messaging in some way, right? There's one member of our sales team here that uses our screen share functionality, and he saw that someone on LinkedIn really liked dogs, for example. So his screen share was a YouTube video, or a video he just found of puppies licking a piece of glass. So it was his face in the corner, and the thumbnail was all these puppies. So of course the person watched it, but he just called that out. He's like, I saw that you like puppies. I wanted to capture your attention. Why I really think we should chat is, and then talked a lot about the value to drive that next step.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love puppies?
That would work on me.
Puppies will get you in the door, and then business value will take you down.
For sure.
Get you the response.
I totally agree with everything you both said. I think the main thing to keep in mind is that the video has to be purposeful. Just as your messaging has to be clear, you have to have a clear call to action. Just remember, what's the goal of this video? What do I want? What am I asking the prospect to do? Do I want them to respond to this email? Am I trying to book a meeting? Do I want them to click on this link, get our free trial? Whatever the ask is, just make sure that while you're being fun and authentic and sending puppy videos, your call to action is clear and it's concise, and you're clear on how exactly you can help them.
Yeah, that's great. So we actually have that question and would love both your thoughts on this. Miguel asks, what is a good CTA? And let's say this is video number one. Are we directly, asking for a meeting in video one? Are we pushing them to content? Patricia, what do you typically see as a good call to action?
Yeah, great question, Miguel. I would say it depends on your business and your industry and who you're reaching out to. So I would need a little bit more info on, what size companies you're reaching, what's the hierarchy, what's the, sales cycle normally like. That sort of thing will drive the actual message that you're sending. Sometimes in large, Fortune 500 companies, it's difficult to navigate a hierarchy. So we usually ask for a referral, and then we can tie that into a referral sequence, for example. If you absolutely know, how exactly you can help them and you can go straight for the ask, then I have some clients where it makes sense. So it all depends. I think if you can do some brainstorming on who you're reaching out to, how exactly you can solve their problem, and just what makes most sense, and ultimately just test it. So you can run different call to action tests in sales loft and outreach to really see what's most effective.
Awesome. Ellen, anything to add there for a good call to action in the first step?
Yeah, so for our outbound team specifically, we do try to drive for a call to have them. We usually use something like Zoom for video calls as well, because you keep the video going. So what we actually do is we can put calls to actions directly in our videos with Vidyard. So avoiding the back and forth of, picking times. When someone watches our video at the end, they automatically see our calendar. So we will typically say, as part of our talk track, my calendar will pop up in just a couple seconds here. Would love for you to pick a time for a brief call. We work with, video works across organizations. I know we're specifically talking about prospecting and sales today, but we will reach out to a ton of different types of personas who have different priorities. So we'll usually speak kind of generally in terms of our value drivers in the first video, but then encourage a conversation around where we can specifically add value to that individual's role.
I like it.
If that doesn't work, referrals, as Patricia said, referrals are also really strong.
Yeah, I would just add to that, if you have strong engagement signals, like somebody's downloaded a lot of your content, they've, watched your videos or opened your emails a bunch, those are strong signals that you should pay attention to, and that should drive a conversation. So I would say if you have anything like that, any intent data, use that in the first email as customization, and then ask for a meeting.
100%. You can actually see when someone watches one of your prospecting videos. So if they don't pick a time in your calendar, pick up the phone and talk to them. They literally just saw your face. They just heard your voice. Continue that conversation. They are potentially at their desk right at that moment consuming your content. So pick up the phone and continue the conversation.
Yeah. And make sure that you're tying in, like, one of the first things that your mouth should be like, hey, I just sent you a video, so that those two kind of
context
come together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. We've got a ton of questions. So this is awesome. This is really, really good. It's obviously something that's very top of mind for a lot of people right now. And there's two of the same questions here. Mohit and Lena both want to know if, Ellen, I'll put this one to you.
Sure.
Is there any data that you have at Vidyard on what is most appropriate video length in a cold email?
So I don't know if we actually, I could take a look afterwards, but best practice from our own usage from talking to a lot of our customers is keep it short. You want to be direct. It's the same as when you're writing a cold email. People's attention spans aren't what they used to be. I think the stat today is human attention spans are shorter than a goldfish, which is kind of shocking, but it's about delivering value, right? So get your message across. What's in it for them to watch that video? What could be a potential next step that could drive continuous value for that prospect? So again, like 30 seconds to a minute is probably what I would suggest, so that you can talk about the value, but keep it really concise and make sure you're holding their attention.
Yeah. I like it. I agree. I think if you're getting over like 90 seconds, you're hindering on someone clicking it, because that's a pretty big commitment, right? But 30 seconds, a minute, that's not a huge commitment.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. We tend to use a bit of an upfront contract in our email where I created this quick 30-second video for you, or 45-second. The worst would be if they find it, you got their attention, they click play, and it's a 12-minute video or something like that. You're going to lose them after the first 30 seconds. So if they can see that commitment to watching it is only a couple of seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, they're more likely to lean into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go back to the community just because we have so many good questions here. And Patricia, I'm going to ask you this one because I know, again, you work with a lot of different industries, a lot of different use cases to build the sales engagement strategy with video. Nathan Pierce wants to know, is it not jarring for a prospect, to receive a random personalized video when this is such a new tactic?
That is a good question. So isn't the best thing in the world to be what Josh Brown calls a red X in a sea of white circles? You want to stand out. Every single email that is out there, your prospects are getting, bombarded with templated or canned, really similar looking content or cold emails or cold outreach. And cold calls sound the same. They know it's a cold call. So yes, although it might seem like a risk to send someone you don't know a video, but you have to take the risks to get the rewards. So I strongly believe in testing and just trying it out. You have to evolve, just as Ellen alluded to earlier at the beginning of this conversation, was that our buyers are smart. They're expecting, a seamless, really strong brand experience. So we have to take the risks to get that.
Yeah.
I'd say go for it.
Totally. I would agree. I remember the first probably 4 people in 2015 who sent me an embedded video in an email. They got a meeting because I was like, this is crazy. What is this? So there is that novelty factor that will make you stand out for sure.
Yeah, I remember when LinkedIn Voice Drop came out. That's been a trendy thing lately. If you're not familiar with LinkedIn Voice Drop, you can send a 60-minute or a 60-second voice clip into someone's inbox. So that has been disruptive as well, and it's taken, it's been a part of a lot of people's strategy these days. And when it first came out, everyone's like, what is this? Should I click this? Should I not? But I think with video, when you see somebody's face, and there are tons of examples out there. I know Vidyard has the classic, hold up the sign that says, hey, Tom, or something personal that they know it's not spam. It's made for that person. It's made specifically for them. So it's safe to open. And again, it's just piques curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Very
agree.
rarely have we had a reaction where someone was thrown off by it. Usually people are excited. When we
Yeah.
call them right afterwards, they're just amazed that we're trying to continue the conversation.
Mhm.
And to your point, to capture their attention, what we've been testing out more and more is, show their LinkedIn profile with your face in the corner and you're kind of scrolling through maybe something in their summary that was really intriguing, because it has to be about them, not about you, right? So maybe
Yeah.
it's something in their role description that you can highlight and say, like, I noticed this specific thing and that's why I reached out. And it's personal, it's for you. You're more likely to lean into it, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, moving forward, I want to talk about, we touched on this briefly, and Patricia, I'll go with you on this one first. Kind of a two-part question. So one, how many touches should we be including in our sequences? And then Ellen, how many videos within that sequence is kind of best practice? And we briefly touched on it.
Okay, so we typically start with 8 to 12 touches in a sequence. 80% of touches or replies happen within the first 5 steps. So if you're doing a short sequence, I would start with minimum 5. And we usually have 6 emails and then incorporating different other touches like direct mail, calls, social, video, things like that. It really depends. Let the data guide your number of touches. So you need to know which actions are tied to opportunities, so you're not spinning your wheels. Like how many touches did it take to get to an opportunity, right? So that's really important information that can help dictate how many steps are in your sequence.
Mm-hmm.
One way we can do that, SalesLoft and Outreach both have an unmanaged package that you can install into your Salesforce instance, and you can report way past just meetings booked. You can see the opportunities, every action tied to that opportunity, the revenue generated, and so on. And so I highly recommend, if you're an Outreach or SalesLoft user, to have that package installed.
Absolutely. I will second that as a, as a slightly biased Outreach user. So something you said there, which was really interesting, is 85% responses come in the first 5 emails. So definitely front loading is the way to go. So put your best kind of content, best templates you have, best videos you have up at the front. But then you can't forget about the rest of the touches, because there's still 15% in there somewhere. But maybe on those ones do more automation, less personalization. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah, for sure. So we go really heavy on the first day. A
Yeah.
lot of customization on email 1. And then email 2 is threaded. Email 3 is a new thread that's customized. So really, it's not customization or a lot of manual emails happening throughout the whole sequence. You're putting, like Scott said, your best foot forward. You're leading with your bread and butter. Your really powerful first few touches are what's going to drive the engagement, the boost of engagement first.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's most important. So I think also to answer your second question, where to tie in video, step 1, we kind of touched on that a little bit. So sometimes if you do have a really complex product or you just want to stand out, you could do a selfie video or a screen share video, walk them through an example, walk them through their website or a use case that makes most sense. So start with video if it makes sense for your personas. And then when engagement starts to drop off, step 4, step 5. And then sometimes we test on the last step too.
Yeah, cool. And one thing, sorry, that just came to my mind there that I remember having a ton of success with my BD team back a few years ago was when we got brushed off on a phone call, or we didn't get our full value prop out, or even if someone actually kind of almost screwed up their pitch a little bit, we would immediately send a video kind of explaining hey, I'm so sorry I was fumbling my words. I'm pretty new at this. Here's what I was trying to get across. Does this make sense? And it was this really humbling, almost falling on your sword approach that we actually had a lot of success with. And so that's another way to think about incorporating it. And So, Ellen, I'm going to go with you for this question. This is from Ashley Smith. Assuming that you're doing kind of this 8 to 12 touch realm at Vidyard.
We are. Yeah.
Is that similar? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the time frame? Like, how in those 12 touches? How long is that? Is that 3 weeks? Is that 2 weeks? How long does that usually take?
I believe ours right now is eight to 10 touches over 16 to 20 days, something like that, where we tend to be a little bit more persistent at the beginning, slow down a little bit in the middle, and then our last couple of touches are closer together in time frame. And to Patricia's point, it's the data that tells us that, what works and what doesn't work, because it's going to depend on your audience. It's going to depend on your value proposition potentially. If you're hitting a certain industry that only has specific buying cycles, there's lots of different reasons that you might make those kinds of decisions. But we have so much strong data available to us now as salespeople that we should be leveraging it to make the best decisions we can.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Follow the data always.
Yeah.
Okay, so we spent quite a lot of time, because of the title, becoming a prospecting pro. But video in line isn't just for prospecting. Obviously, you can do things on social. You can do all these different things. Ellen, where else can you include video, and where does the team at Vidyard have success other than just prospecting emails?
Yeah, of course. So with my team being the prospecting team, being the inbound and outbound team, we obviously use it all day, every day. We use it for internal communications too. When we have new individuals coming on board, they create videos for us that we certify them on messaging and things like that. It's really efficient leveraging video that way too. I mentioned the handoff process. So when an SDR or a BDR hands it off to an account executive, we always do an introduction video to build that relationship with the account executive. Our account executives are using it throughout the cycle as well. They use a ton of videos from our solutions consultant team, things like micro demos. Don't have to wait to book a custom demo. We can kind of start to send some micro demos, things like that to continue the discussion. We use proposal videos when we're walking through a proposal. Instead of just sending the paperwork, we'll walk them through all the points of everything that's included. And then once they've watched it, send the paperwork. I think it's the same concept. It's like, look at areas in your process to see where it might add value, and create videos for it. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one video each time. There's content that you can create. If you're always sending the same type of message, turn that into a video and use that over and over. And we talked a little bit about the analytics and pay attention to who's watching what at what time. It drives a lot of efficiencies in the prospecting process, but also the sales process for sure.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea of proposal videos, and something I've also seen a lot of success with, because it also, it allows your champion to go socialize that with multiple stakeholders as well, except you're the one in the driver's seat versus them having to almost play a game of telephone and do it. I like that. And then another one personally that I love, maybe because I'm a little bit lazy, for any of the account executives out there, that recap email that you do almost every single call that you're on. I know I used to just turn right after I got off the call, everything was fresh in my mind, and I would just do a super quick recap email. And instead of it taking 30, 35 minutes to write out an email, it took me 2 minutes because everything was top of mind.
Yep. Okay.
And so, Patricia, going to you, same question. Other areas, where else can you include video? Where else do you like video right now?
Yeah, that post call is awesome. If something stands out to them in your conversation, or like a product feature they were jazzed about, make sure you send them a video about that. It can float around internally as well. It's super easy for them to send a video to somebody, and sometimes it's easier to explain your product or your service through the video. So I love that one. I do a lot of trainings on outreach and sales left. So sometimes when we're going through a workflow for SDRs or something like that, it's super easy to hop on a video, record the training, and then also have that in a playbook or use as a resource when you bring on new SDRs or new sales members using the tool. So trainings is a big one.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty much everything you guys have said. So customer success as well. If someone has an issue, customer success can turn on the screen share, show them exactly how to resolve it or what a new product launch or something like that. So anything product related, it's really nice to walk someone through it and they can visually see what's going on.
Totally. Absolutely. Ellen, going back to you, this is a clarifying question, and this is Max Newtel. Max, thanks for the question, man. Put me on the spot a little bit. Could you specify what those AE intro videos actually sound like? What's going on in those AE intro videos?
I think it depends on the context of what the SDR or the BDR knows, but for the most part, it's a bit of a recap of what we know already. So our account executive might say, I've had a chance to chat with Jay from our BDR team. He mentioned these are some of your priorities right now. Here's a couple of ways that we've helped other customers with that specific issue or priority. Really looking forward to our call. Potentially they're including like what's going to be covered on the call. I think like the account executive kind of makes the decision of what they want to include. Sometimes they'll film it together. They'll get in a room and kind of just to like, hey, thanks again for that call. My senior colleague Matt here is going to be joining us on the next discussion. Talk to him about what we discussed, and then Matt will start talking. So it's just leveraging it and kind of reiterating the importance of the call too, or what will be covered on the call has been helpful for things like no-show rates. It's because again, the momentum is continued, and sometimes with a BDR, they might say, yes, I'll take that next discussion, and potentially forget what they said yes to, or when the meeting pops up in their calendar, like, why did I agree to this? So leveraging a video with some of those tips in it, the recap of what was discussed, what will be discussed on this meeting, goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think of it as, we already do a lot of these things. It's just making them a little more seamless, and maybe the BDR doesn't actually have to join that call because now there's already that warmth, and they can focus on their continued prospecting. All right, Ellen, going back to you, because I think you'll be the best one to answer this one as well. What's a good view rate on videos?
Good question. So I don't have our stats off the top of our head in terms of how many videos to how many we get views on, but we do a lot of like Patricia mentioned, like threading. So if we create a personalized video and it didn't get watched the first time, we'll potentially thread onto that, add a little bit more value of why they should watch the video and try to drive back to it. I think it's like try to make the most out of every contact that you reach out to, try to convert each one. So that's a good question. I wish I had like a specific stat. Like a good one for us would be like 100%. We always want to get everybody to engage with our messaging, but that's sort of impossible. If I can convert potentially 20% of the people I reach out, 10 to 20%, I'd be happy with that. Yeah.
That sounds like a good number. 20% you're reaching out to is awesome. Okay, let's go. Well, this is in the same vein, but just any examples, Patricia, of just one of the coolest uses of video that you've seen recently within the last 6 months?
I think I touched on it earlier, someone's playing the guitar, sending over a song.
Nice.
Awesome. But one that's really, really smart that one of my clients is doing, I work with Patient Pop. They help medical practices with their web presence and their online reputation. And they have a really awesome internal tool called a competitive scanner. And they use video to actually walk the prospect through the scanner. It ranks that doctor against 3 other local practices. So they physically walk them through on the screen what their score is, how they can see a graph of them versus the 3 locals, and show them exactly an area that they can improve. And they also include the link for that collateral or that piece of content in the body of the email if they want to dive in further. And I think it's really smart because it walks them through what they're trying to get them to click on. And then the click rate is through the roof. Like their click rates are 25%, 30%. So it really helps to show exactly what you're trying to send, showing the value, and then driving them to click. So you're kind of dictating your own engagement signal at that point. So I think it's just really smart.
I like that one a lot. Yeah, because it's not gimmicky in any way. They're getting value right up front, and it's building that relationship off of that. That's really cool. Ellen, coolest use of video that you've seen recently?
I have received the music video one where someone is playing guitar. So things we've done internally, I think it's about like kind of showing off your personality, authenticity to capture that attention. Obviously, we're in Canada, so we sometimes will film videos in the snow saying, "I've been waiting out in the cold to get your response." Like we try to have fun with it, right? We had an account executive who would hold her breath in the thumbnail, and then when they clicked play, it would be like, "I've been holding my breath waiting for you to engage with my message." Those have been some of the most fun ones I've seen for sure. We had a member of our CSM team who was a magician on the side. So as he was walking people through things, he would be like doing tricks and things like that. So have fun with it, right? There's a lot you could do with it. Don't shy away from showing your personality. I think for a lot of individuals as they get started, they will emulate some of their peers and how they're doing video. Just like when you're cold calling, you emulate someone else's talk track, but eventually you just got to make it your own and get creative with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a funny one actually. So for people who haven't done video before and you're kind of, it's sometimes uncomfortable when you first get in front of the camera and you might have a lot of bloopers. So you can try, you might record 10 of them before you feel confident in one. I was talking to a customer who compiled all of the bloopers and sent it to the prospect, and it was just nice. A bunch of them like, "Hi, like trying so hard to get the perfect video," and the message was just like, "I'm really trying hard here to get in touch with you. Can we just hop on a call?" And they got a meeting. Awesome. So I think it's important to know that like we're all human, and that's what's effective in video is that human element. So you don't have to be perfect. Like play to your strengths, be human. You can mess up a little if you want, but that's ultimately, just be natural and be you.
Yeah. I love that. Those are all great ones. I'm trying to rack my head at anything we didn't cover there. Oh, I've seen people leverage holidays really well. So if it's like Halloween or St. Patrick's Day or anything, that can be fun. And I think you mentioned it, but bringing like groups together, it's an interesting thumbnail. You're like, wow. Again, it goes like, they got this many people together in a room for me. Like you kind of have to click on it. I love it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about harnessing the data and doing some proper A/B testing. Patricia, I know this is very much the world that you live in. How important is proper A/B testing in sequences and when using video?
Yes. So A/B testing drives everything that I do every day. So I work across lots of industries and different personas, as you know, and we come out with a general framework that we think is going to be successful, but we let the data drive the next decisions and tell us what's working and what's really not. So it's super important to understand in a data-driven matter what's working, what's not, to make your next shift, right? We have to constantly change. What's working for you this week might not work next month, So it constantly has to be based on data. And there are a couple tips. I don't know if this is jumping ahead, but I have a couple tips on how to properly A/B test. One, try and keep everybody using the same sequence or the same cadence, because if you have lots of reps just making their own sequences or writing their own messaging, it's really hard to run your tests and run reporting and know what's working and what's not. So if they're using a master sequence where everybody loads their prospects in and customizes it as they need to, you're going to get a much better sample size and faster reporting on what's working and what's not. So your data is really mature. I'd also say only test one thing at a time. It's sometimes really easy to go in and like change the sentence of a template or something like that, but you want to make sure that you can really attribute the success to one thing that you've changed. So if you're changing a subject line, keep the message the same. If you're changing the medium, like you're using video, keep the message the same, so you can know, okay, it was actually this subject line that boosted results, or it was actually video that boosted engagement.
I love that. Great advice. Getting a master sequence so you can get an aggregate of enough data to actually make an informed decision, and then focus on one thing at a time. How often are you making iterations then? Like do I have to run it for 2 weeks Can I run a test for a week? Does it have to be a month? How quickly are you iterating? Because I think, as young BD managers, or you're running the team and you just want to make these little changes all the time. What in your eyes is a large enough sample size to make an informed decision?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So if it's not working, we're kind of in this instant gratification, like it's not working, we got to change it type of mentality. But we do want to wait it out until we have enough data to say, okay, it's time to change it, or hey, no, this is actually really working now that we have enough people that have gone through it. So a good place to start is 150. That's typically what you say. So 150 people go through each variant. So if you're testing subject line A and subject line B, we want 150 to go through each one. If it also depends, right? Like if that's a crazy number to you and your team doesn't prospect that often, then maybe you only test once a month, right? And if they are heavy in prospecting and they're adding 50 new people in every day, you'll get to that number a lot faster.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So minimum 150 people, depending on how many people you're adding to the sequence every day. Ellen, let's take a similar question, but how do you actually measure success with video? And then what results have you seen? When do you know that you're killing it with video?
Yeah, so we pay attention to the data that's available to us through, we use a lot of technology here. So obviously we look at the click-through rate on our emails that we're using video versus when we're not using video. We look at the response rates when we're using video versus not using video. We look at, for every contact that we brought in, how many of those converted to a meeting, converted to an opportunity. So probably pretty typical stats that a lot of the audience is using today, but we do want to break it down to, when we're using certain medium and when we aren't. I think like in the science of sales, you have to be paying attention to all that stuff. I talked about earlier what's a successful view rate on a video, and I think it's about marginal gains, right? It's like making those changes in A/B split testing. I would love to go from 10, 20 to 100% of people watching videos and converting that way, but there is typically no big silver bullet to make those kinds of giant changes. It's about paying attention to the data and testing and getting better every day. So we probably don't look at it as often as we should. Patricia, we should probably chat a little bit about some of your split testing best practices. But we definitely pay attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say too, if you're new to Vidyard, one of the things that we always talk about, and it's just change management, it's a new process, but as an individual contributor, you're maybe not looking at these kinds of reports in Salesforce often, but Vidyard shows you who's opening your videos. So on an individual level, you can even look in the extension and it says 5 people viewed your video, or this person viewed your video. And that's one of the first things I would look for if I came in and loaded up my computer in the morning, is who watched my videos, because that's your low-hanging fruit now. Yeah. Those are the people you can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, sent you a video, and you have some context and you have a talking point. So just looking at that, you can also even see the percentage that they've watched. So you can see they watched 100% of your video, or they watched 5%. So that could also dictate the conversation.
Yeah, and that's huge for sort of tailoring next steps, right? So potentially you had a quick cold call with them, and they mentioned they're using 2 technologies you integrate with, and you sent them a follow-up video that talks about both, and they rewatched one and they didn't watch the other one. It's that could be your strong follow-up message. What messaging they're leaning into. If they're rewatching a certain topic over and over again, that's probably aligning best to their priorities. So it really does sort of change your behavior to make sure you're working efficiently and effectively with the data that you have.
Absolutely. All right, before we go, because we have 7,000,001 questions here, and we got about 5 minutes left, but I know, Patricia, there is one more. We have an example coming up here, I believe, of an actual, do we? Here, yes. Do you want to walk us through this quickly?
Sure, yeah. So this is available, or will be available soon. Vidyard and Copyshoppe is actually coming out with a prospecting playbook that is going to go through pretty much what we talked about today and then some. And we pulled this directly from the playbook. It's a really basic framework that you can implement today that incorporates different types of steps and the frequency that we talked about a little bit too. So first day, like we said, we're pretty heavy on customization and mediums. So it's the trifecta. We're sending a video or an email, we're calling, and we're also, hitting them up on LinkedIn or social. So that's pretty heavy on day 1. And then we're automating day 3. Day 6 is a phone call. And again, within these, we're paying attention to those engagement insights, and that's what's driving the conversation. So if they did open my video, maybe my email is regarding that video and I can change it up, or that's the call track that I take when I give them a call on day 6. Similarly, on day 9 for video, in the playbook, we go in depth on the different types of videos that you can send, but here we recommend giving an example. So instead of doing a manual selfie video or a screen share, you can send them like a case study or a testimonial of how you helped someone similar and what the outcome was. And then same thing, email and phone call, day 13 and 16. So this is a really simple, basic framework that you can start with. And then as we hit home with, test, and let the data tell you where to add steps, where to take away steps, where to change it up.
Awesome. And yeah, for anyone who wants this playbook that is coming out, I actually just threw it in the chat. And you can also go to www.vidyard.com/sales-hacker to check it out. I would highly recommend it. All right, let's try and we'll do some rapid fire questions for the last 3 minutes. And we're not going to be able to get to all of them, unfortunately. But if people want to connect with you, Ellen, Patricia, best place to do that is LinkedIn, email, Twitter.
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the easiest one for me yet.
Yeah.
Send me a video.
Yeah, or Patricia at copyshoppe.co. Either one.
Love it. Okay, I like this question. This question is from Clinton Lee. Clinton, thanks for the question, man. When prospecting into enterprise, how does the use of video strategy change versus SMB? And Ellen, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think it doesn't change too much, to be honest, in the way that we approach it. We definitely have more personas that we can reach out to. So sometimes we'll do persona-based personalization in our videos, so leaning more on their title than looking through every single one of their LinkedIns. If there's, say, 6 VPs of sales and 10 sales managers that you want to reach out to, depending on your persona, we'll do some of that. We might actually just cold call some of the managers and understand the messaging that we should leverage above them. These are sort of just prospecting best practices anyway. And then we look for opportunities to use video to engage with the different audiences. So we might change the way we message to them, more persona based, if there's less individuals or more individuals rather, that are involved in a purchasing decision or fit our persona. But we will, for the most part, use similar cadences, similar messaging, that kind of thing.
Nice. Patricia, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we like to go the referral route there too. Like if it's tough and they've got 8 VPs and we don't know exactly who's involved in the decision making, send a video maybe to a lower title and try and keep it like maybe connect on common ground, send them that puppy video and be like, do you know who to talk to about this? So you're like buddy with them to gain more information. So then when you do reach out to those VPs, you can say, hey, Charlie told me you were the best person to talk to. So you can leverage video that way in an enterprise to sort of navigate the hierarchy, I guess.
Yeah. I would add to that too, when we do the persona-based ones to say 8 VPs, when say 2 of them end up watching the video, we'll do more personalized ones as follow-ups if we can't reach them on the phone right away. So you get a little bit more targeted once we realize that a couple of those are leaning into our message, and we can potentially get momentum with them easier than another individual.
Smart. I like that. All right, really quickly, last one. I'm going to sneak it in before 12. What are the most effective cover pictures for these videos that increase clicks? Any best practices there, Ellen?
I think, again, it has to be about that person. So we tend to use the screen share showing their LinkedIn or maybe an article they wrote. We also work with marketers, so sometimes we'll show their website and on the thumbnail. And then when we don't do that, we tend to do something that it says their name in it. So Patricia, you mentioned the whiteboard, or we do something where it says their name on our phone and we're holding our phone, just to sort of make sure they know it's for them and it's not just a picture of me in their inbox.
I love it. Patricia, any final thoughts there?
Yeah, you can now put an animated thumbnail. It gives you the option to put the still frame. So if you have a still frame with a photo or something, you can, but you can do an animated. So the very first snapshot of your video could be the thumbnail. So it's kind of like a meme. So you can do something cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
I like it.
Which again, the movement is just an attention grabber. So
Totally. Attention grabber, humanization, creativity. I like it. The futures of sales is looking fun for sure. Awesome. Well, Ellen, Patricia, thank you so much for hanging out with us. You two are both a wealth of knowledge. We'll have to have you both back. I think there's already everyone's begging for part 2 and 3 on this. So thank you so much. And everyone who had such great engagement throughout, thanks for hanging out. And connect with these two on LinkedIn and go grab that playbook.